All right, so we're going to begin with our very first lesson, the emergence of Japanese civilization. And this lesson will really set up how the country we know today as Japan was set up and came to fruition. I do warn you that this material for lesson one is a little more dry than other material we'll be covering throughout the course because we're dealing with prehistory and a nation that hasn't become a nation yet. But you'll see that as we get into the course, things will really start to pick up. And even though this material for lesson one is not the most exciting in the world, at least it's going to set up how Japan came to be. So in that respect, it's very, very important and crucial to what we're going to be doing here. So the first thing I want to do before discussing Japanese history is some geography. And one of my favorite quotes says, "Geography is the stage of history." What this means is, if you don't know where things are taking place, it's very hard to figure out or be interested in what's taking place. So before learning about what happens, we have to learn about the names and the places of where things took place in Japanese history. So where is Japan located? As you might know, it's in East Asia. It's an island nation located in the Pacific Ocean. And it's actually consisted of many, many different islands of different sizes. Some of them are bigger, some of them are very, very small, some of them are uninhabited. We call these types of islands archipelagos. So you might hear Japan referred to as the Japanese archipelago. That's what they're referring to. And the capital and the largest city, as you may know, is Tokyo, one of the world's premier travel destinations. But it wasn't always that way. So you'll learn about what Tokyo used to be called and also what the previous capital of Japan, previous capitals rather, were called as well. This is a map of what Japan looks like today. And again, the country of Japan used to be a lot bigger. And we'll learn about why and what countries were part of what was called the Japanese Empire. But this is what the state of Japan looks like today. You're probably familiar with this map, but I thought I'd include it just in case. So there's actually four main islands in the Japanese archipelago, and their names are important. It might be hard for you to pronounce, but since this is an online class, you can practice saying them to yourselves as many times as you'd like, and no one will hear you. So the four main islands are Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Okay, these are the four main Japanese islands, but there's actually over 6,000 smaller islands. And a lot of these are actually uninhabited. Nobody lives there. Some of them are, they're habited, but not too big of a population. So Japan is geologically active. It's located on the Ring of Fire, so that's why you have many, many earthquakes that take place. You've probably known that Japan is famous for earthquakes. There was that big tragedy in 2011 with the earthquake and tsunami. That's because Japan is actually situated on several volcanic belts. So not only are there lots of earthquakes, there's also lots of active volcanoes. Actually, Mount Fuji is used to be an active volcano. It last erupted in the 1700s, but it was a volcano. And also because it's in such a geologically active area, you do have lots of tremors. Sometimes there's earthquakes happening every day in Japan, even if you don't feel them. And you have lots of typhoons, lots of rain, especially in the summer when we have the rainy season. You have a lot of rain that just starts out of nowhere. So it's very, even though it's very hot and humid, you also have a lot of rain over the summer months. So the winters are very, very cold, and the summers are tropical. So it's very humid, very wet, lots of rain. That's why the best time to go to Japan is springtime when you have the cherry blossoms. But because of school or work responsibilities, people usually have to suck it up and go during the summer. So Japan is pretty big, okay, and it's about 145,000 square miles. But this doesn't really mean anything because 70% of the island, of space on the island, consists of mountains and hills. You cannot farm there and you cannot live there, okay? So it's very, very difficult to find livable land. Only 30% of the land is livable, which is why Japan is overpopulated and overcrowded. You have millions of people competing to live on 30% of land, okay? And also Japan has very, very few natural resources in its own right. And this will become very important as we go later on in history and you see Japan conquering many nations during World War II. Why did they need to do that? Well, because they didn't have any natural resources to feed their huge population. So we'll learn about this later on. So quick question. I have ask your partner here, but you probably don't have a partner at home taking the course with you or a study buddy taking the course with you. So ask yourself. So what's bigger, Japan or our state of California? Okay, what do you think? The answer is California is actually bigger. So Japan is 145,000 square miles. California is a little bigger, 163,000 square miles. So California is actually bigger than Japan, even though they look almost the same. If you want to find an America, if you take all the islands of Japan and you put them together, it's actually more comparable to the state of Montana than California. As of 2013, the population of Japan was 127 million. Okay, and this number always fluctuates. The majority of people do live in the big cities of Honshu, especially Tokyo, Osaka, and so these cities are very, very overcrowded. This is a picture of what Japan looks like at rush hour. In the big cities, people are, the station attendants have to crowd people into trains because there's so many of them. But essentially, this is why Japan is so overcrowded, because you have so many millions of people living in the big cities. So another question to ask yourself, which location has more people, population, Japan or California? This answer, actually, Japan wins the award for the most population. Japan has 127 million people, and California only has 38 million people, even though we're bigger and we have so much land, right? So think about this overpopulation, where you have 30% of livable land in Japan, and you have so many millions of people living on that small land, right? People really have to make do, especially in the big cities, and make very small apartments, very small living spaces in order for everybody to fit. All right, the political system of Japan. Japan is a constitutional monarchy. Okay, that means that there is an emperor, but the emperor does not have any real power anymore. He used to, not anymore. Okay, his rights and his abilities are governed by the Constitution of Japan, which we have as well. And the actual government is run by the prime minister and representatives who are elected by the people into the Japanese parliament, which is known as the Diet. Some people say it's pronounced diet, but it's actually pronounced, depends who you ask, diet or diet, either one is fine. I say diet. But the prime minister and the representatives who are elected by each prefecture, by each constituency, uh, run the country from the parliament. So this is very similar to the British system, not the American system. In the United States, we elect a president, and the president is, well, the Electoral College elects the president, but you know what I mean. It's, everyone actually votes for a person that they would like to become the president of the United States. In Japan, you don't have this system. Nobody goes to the ballot box and says, I'm voting for this person to be prime minister. What you do is you vote for your political party. So you're voting for a representative from your political party to go to the Diet and argue for you and to advocate for you and your constituency, for your community. And whichever party wins more seats in the Diet, in the elections, picks their party leader, whoever runs that party, to be the prime minister. So essentially, you're not voting for a certain person to be prime minister. You're actually voting for a political party that is going to represent you. And then whoever is in charge of that political party becomes the prime minister. So that's why Japan has so many prime ministers, because every time someone says, okay, I don't want to be the leader of the party anymore, they're also giving up the prime minister position. Okay, so it's a little different from the US, where we have a more direct democratic system where you vote for a president. I know we have the Electoral College, but still at the end of the day, you're going to the ballot box and picking one person or another person to be the president. In Japan, you don't pick the prime minister. You pick the party, and then the party will say, okay, our leader is this person, so they will be the prime minister until they step down. And this is the current emperor of Japan, Naruhito. He recently became emperor in 2019. And it was the first time in about 3 centuries that an emperor of Japan had abdicated the throne. So this was a really big historical event that we'll discuss towards the end of the course. But this is the current emperor and the current prime minister Shinzo Abe, who is a member of the conservative uh, political party in Japan known as the Liberal Democratic Party. And he's been prime minister for a few years as well.